Hey everybody, welcome in. It's Saturday, and today we're going to recap the week. But before we do that, let's talk about what's going on in the world. And a big thank you to the mods in the chat, TND, Tesla, and everybody else. So crypto market cap is, I think, 1.1 trillion. Bitcoin had a kind of a big move last week, and then as usual, it moves and then it stops. Mr. KO, thank you so much. 24-hour volume is very light. I think it was about 17 billion. It's normally around 30 to 40. Bitcoin price, 27,933 as we speak. Market dominance, 49% and change. And ETH, 1635. ETH has been a bit of a laggard. ETH dominance only 18%. Fear and greed is 49, down from 50, I think, on Tuesday last time I looked at it. And the best performing sector apparently is jobs. We'll talk about jobs today. We'll talk about Bitcoin. We'll talk about adoption. Why adoption? And a whole bunch more stuff. Recap all the altcoins. Talk about a little bit of disruption, a little bit of oil, and everything else. And of course, this is just edutainment. And get smarter right here if you want to. Time's going to get more competitive. And I mentioned the story already. So let's look at some results for the week. October so far is, well, two very green spots. Solana and Avalanche were the winners this last week, which is kind of special. Let's look at the dollar performance as well. Bitcoin up 4% for the week. Ethereum down 2% in dollar terms. And then we have Solana up 15%, Cardano up 3.5%, Avalanche up 12%, McGlone 7%. And the worst and only dark red performer on this whole chart for the week is Chainlink, down 6%. So interesting week indeed. Let's look at the stock market as well. You can see a lot of green here, especially across the names that we look at. Nvidia, Microsoft, Apple, Google, Meta, Tesla. A little bit of farmers are doing well too. AVGO, TSM. Again, not too bad despite catastrophic macro. There's so much bad going on in the macro, but the markets go up. And as I always say, Sir Winston, it's because there's money. All right. There's money coming. Money is like a tide flowing in and it raises up everything. This is what many people, even macro experts, fail to recognize. Anywho, let's talk about this. This time is different. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel. I will be breaking this down in great detail, probably after DCA on Monday. Well, I've got a lot of stuff. I got a Patreon exclusive on Monday. I have DCA on my channel with Ivan and CTO on Monday morning, 7:30 a.m. Pacific. But we'll squeeze this in at some stage. And it shows you how definitely this time is completely different, because long-term holders are hitting records every single day and short-term holders are shrinking fast. And if big money comes, price is going to go parabolic. That's so many people are talking about how this run could be very special and it'll catch a lot of people off guard. So we'll get back to that later. Speaking of those who still have hope for a 60% downturn, Mike McGlone, who is the star of our friend's channel, but Mike McGlone, the Bloomberg analyst, he's a senior macro strategist. And he says Bitcoin price could drop by 60% due to negative liquidity and persistent global rate hikes and recession signals, etc. Now, Mike has been great. I've been watching Mike. I've seen him transfer from, being an absolute Bitcoin bull to an absolute bear and kind of bit gloomy. Mike McGloomy, I think they call him. So it's been a very strange transformation. But as I also say, not only in times of crisis does Bitcoin do very well, and we're seeing that as well all around the world. We've seen that this year predominantly as well. Nobody wants to do bonds anymore. Where are they going to park cash? It's only just beginning. So again, I don't know. He should know better. Anyhow, we'll see who's right or wrong. Me or Mike McGlone. We should get him on the channel. I'd love that. El Salvador launched their Bitcoin Volcano mine. El Salvador, I think they called it Lava Pool today. It was their first Bitcoin mining pool powered by renewable geothermal energy. And the venture is a collaboration between the energy company Volcano Energy and the tech corporation Luxor Technology. Very good Substack as well there that I subscribe to. It's the country's first attempt to harness the abundance of renewable geothermal energy for crypto mining. And they have pledged to commit 23% of its net income to the Salvadorian government. I really hope this works out great for the country. The country's already been doing very well. It's 2 years, by the way, since they've adopted Bitcoin, and everything is up. Crime is down. But all the tourism and GDP numbers, etc., are doing really well. So shout out to Nayib Bukele, who's doing an incredible job. And he was a very brave man to take this step. So let's watch this carefully. Next, let's talk about world and Bitcoin, because this is fascinating. And shout out to Sanjay as well, who shared this with me. It's the number of crypto owners by country. And this is very interesting from a number of perspectives. One, I've always said there's a correlation between kind of, call it unrest or uncertainty or inflation or authoritarianism or whatever else in these certain countries and Bitcoin and crypto adoption. And it's really fascinating. So these are the top countries in the world. And the reason this is interesting is look at India, 157.6 million. Remember, the country does have 1.4 billion, but that's a lot of people and a lot of adoption. It's early days yet. Remember S-curves? This will just go up from here at an accelerated pace. United States, 44.3 million crypto owners in the country. So if you are a politician in the United States and you are anti-crypto, you are closing yourself off to 44.3 million people. And those people typically are influential as well. Then you have number 3 in the box, Vietnam. Number 4, China. Brazil, number 5, 17.8 million. Philippines, Pakistan, Nigeria, Indonesia, Russia. So what I did was I overlaid this chart with, if I was to think of 2 terms that would basically describe these nations. And I start at the top with the gold, recovering and uneven. That is in India, a very entrepreneurial, very hardworking, very smart culture and huge growing middle class. And they are on crypto. And in fact, I've even noticed a lot more views on my channel now come from India. And that didn't happen 2 years ago. So I can see it in the data as well. Number 2 is uncertain and uneven. I'll talk more about number 2, why things are very uncertain in a minute. Number 3, growing and transforming. So I tried to pick words that are kind of representative of these countries. China, CBDC and slowing. So the other reason for adoption of crypto is because of Orwellian spy coins, central bank digital currencies. I do not like them. So if your business is about supporting them, I don't like those businesses either, kind of like cigarette companies. And that's just who I am. Brazil, corruption and inflation. Philippines, inflation and poverty, I'm afraid to say. And Pakistan, corruption and inflation as well. Nigeria, corruption and inflation. Indonesia, corruption and inflation. And Russia, contracting and very uncertain future. So these are the primary reasons people jump into crypto. It's the life raft. It's the only chance that many people have to get out of poverty and save themselves. So there we are, top countries in the world. But look at this, talking about country number 2. What has people nervous? Well, look at this. $2 trillion in new debt over the last 16 weeks. That is staggering. When you look at the visuals that I've shared many, many times of what $1 trillion looks like, it's unbelievable. This is putting many, many thousands of dollars on every worker's credit card, literally almost overnight. And we printed nearly $500 billion in the last 2 weeks alone. And one day was nearly $250 billion. The amount of money printing that's happening is ridiculous. So you can do this at home. A quick math calculation for anybody. Over time, every bit of debt that's issued will ultimately debase the dollar. Okay? So you take 2 divided by 31.4 trillion. 2 trillion divided by 31.4. That is how much you're going to lose in purchasing power for the dollar in 16 weeks. So if anybody can calculate the number, drop it below in the comments. I'd like to see if you guys see that. And it's a very rude wake-up call as well. So speaking of politics and governments and Bitcoin, Sam Altman, the founder of ChatGPT and that whole group OpenAI, he said, and this is very interesting from Bitcoin Archive, and again, it touches on global currency outside of government control. He said, I'm excited about Bitcoin too. The idea that we have a global currency that's outside the control of any government is a super logical and important step. That is bullish coming from he. And also many people believe there's going to be a convergence between AI and Bitcoin as we go forward. So let's talk about more that ties into all of kind of what's happening in the world today. And politics. We had a historic moment this week in the United States. A guy called McCarthy was ousted and a new guy was put in. And this talks about kind of the speaker race and crypto policy implications in short, and the path forward in the House for crypto legislation, which is important for the US. And of course, many countries typically follow what the US does. And any legislation, of course, is unclear and delayed until a speaker is elected. But why? Why is the Speaker of the House so important? Well, in the United States, the Speaker determines what bills get brought to the floor, when, and is generally the lead negotiator with the Senate and the White House counterparts when it comes to reaching deals on must-pass bills like government funding, like crypto bills, etc. So having a pro-crypto guy, pro-Bitcoin guy is big and very influential for the future. And maybe they can exert some pressure on some of the craziness coming out of the SEC, filing frivolous lawsuits against all sorts of people, not just in crypto, and other spaces too. Anyway, moving on. The best political campaign ever is this. This is the Bitcoin chart versus the dollar. The Bitcoin price will go up in time. The dollar is guaranteed to go down over time. That is why I make these videos, okay? And the software behind Bitcoin is impartial. It has no politics. It has no military. It has no CEO. It has no help desk. It has no authoritative stance. It's got no racial bias. It holds no opinions. It operates on a trustless mechanism. And this is the immutable truth. And that's why everybody needs some Bitcoin. Anywho, let's look at crypto winners losers last week. You can see here the two big winners. Avalanche, week over week as of yesterday, per Artemis. 16.7% up for Avalanche, and Solana up 16.2%. And you can see a lot of the other winners, Bitcoin up to 4.3%. And everything else was kind of mixed, except some of the other altcoins were down. So a mixed bag there. But what's going on in the space? Let's analyze our kind of little dashboard, L1s and L2s this week, and identify the winners and losers. So first of all, these are kind of the chains this week. Solana wins the 30-day change, up 20% for developer commits. The 7-day Avalanche and Solana up 16%. Price action, those two win. Cardano TVL up 6%. Also driven by Cardano, stablecoin volume is up 4%. So 2 wins for Cardano this week. And Solana, again, as mentioned, dev commitments, etc. Daily transactions are kind of mixed. Despite where we are, we're seeing some low activity across some chains, and we're not yet in that true kind of hype movement time that we'll go into in the next 6 to 12 months for sure. Now, let's talk a little bit about Solana for the Solana people out there in the audience. There's a lot of interesting stuff happening. First of all, this is from TED Talks Macro. Solana at $23 is far superior to Solana when it was trading at $200 plus. And it's only a matter of time until you realize it's the superior L1, not my words, TED Talks Macro. So we're getting people from all over the place beginning to, realize what Solana is. And Solana's latest update now brings native support for private blockchain transactions. All right, let's dig a little bit deeper. Let's look at some Solana versus Ethereum and hashtag OPOS. But this is very, very important. More than 2/3 of USDC transactions on Solana are transfers of less than $100, and more than 1/3 are USDC transfers between $1 and $10. And the high frequency of small dollar-denominated transactions on Solana highlight the network's potential for supporting payments activity, i.e. only possible on Solana, i.e. the consumer chain, etc. If you compare that to Ethereum, 83.12% of Ethereum USDC transfers are above $10,000. And that's all because it's expensive to transact on Ethereum. But at the end of the day, it's all about the actual volume. Yes, Ethereum is great if you're moving large amounts of money, but you're never going to be able to onboard 1 billion users because we don't have 1 billion people who are going to be transferring $10,000 on a daily basis. That's just the reality. So we need a consumer chain for the other half of the spectrum, and that is Solana. But it gets better. This is from VANECK, and this is kind of breaking news today. A lot of people are excited about it. VANECK run about $80 billion in assets under management. They're not a small player, and they are quite sophisticated, and they are embracing crypto, and they understand exactly what it is. VANECK estimates that the TAM revenue opportunity, the total addressable market revenue opportunity for payments on Solana, will be between $700 million and $3.3 billion, as the average fee on Solana will likely be between $0.005 and $0.001. And remember, a big player, lots of money, but they talk about how a new payment system where USDC payments are used in lieu of credit card payments, and merchants could work with Circle to rebate a portion of the savings to consumers through a new point system, or even using direct payments in USDC. Basically, RIP credit cards, sooner or later, unless they embrace, they will die. That's one of the reasons why Visa, the 11th biggest company in the world, partnered with Solana, because they see the writing on the wall, like VANECK see as well. So exciting times ahead. In addition, Solana cNFTs are off to the races. These are the compressed NFTs, and the weekly mint volume is up 1,600% year to date because of C, which is the compressed NFTs, which is the technology that Solana also brought to the table. For a compressed NFT, it means you can mint 1 million NFTs for approximately $110. Now, a lot of the action is being driven by the Helium network, but it's also become used more in communities with collections like the Tensorians as well. So again, another example of kind of consumer chain capability through this chain. Now, let's talk about Ledger. Ledger waxed 12% of their staff, sadly, and they're still recovering from the Recover controversy. That's the kind of backdoor to your ledger. So they're still not clear if they're going to abandon that whole idea. I hope they do for their business. It is a novel idea, but having a backdoor to something that should be secure is not good. No ifs, ands, or buts. So sad to see. Hopefully it'll help them understand. Let's talk about what other things that happened this week. Is sometimes the information out of Bloomberg is very mixed. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad. It really depends on who the writer is. But this is data from Bloomberg, and it shows that both Model 3, which has been less than the price of the average car in the United States, but now the Model Y is also less than the average car in the United States. And that's before rebates, everybody. So literally, everyone's, well, at least somewhere between 16 and 28% of the people want a BEV. The penetration is still very, very low, but it's changing very fast. And when people understand more about how easy it is to charge and how low the cost of ownership is and how service is non-existent on these cars, maintenance non-existent, people will wake up. In addition, California, something good came out of California. The coolest thing to come out of Cali, this from Story of Merit, is Model Y, not only the best car on earth, but California Manufacturers and Technology Association, CMTA, crowned the Model Y the coolest thing made in California. And multiple inventions come out of the Golden State. So they have a long history of that, but it's nice to see a little accolade going to Elon. Next, and the Tesla team, of course. This one is interesting. U.S. jobs report on fire, or is it? So President Biden said, "My dad used to say that a job's about a lot more than a paycheck. It's about being able to look your kids in the eye and say, honey, it's going to be all right." With today's job report, 336,000 more Americans can say that and mean it. But there's a twist. Let's go into that twist. First of all, job creation surge. And this is kind of important because it's happening all over the world. And the reason I talk about jobs, two reasons. One, sometimes the data we get from our government is misleading. And number two, we're going through a revolution where AI is really going to hurt things, and we ain't seen nothing yet. But this was in CNBC Pro. Even as job creation surges, Americans still think the economy stinks. Here's why. Obviously, we know why. Things are much more expensive, even though they say inflation is, say, 3.1% or 4.9%. It's really a lot more. And you just know by going into your grocery store and buying apples and see how much they've gone up in price over the last 3 years. It's a lot more than you think. But what's interesting is the actual job growth, where it's coming from. And a hat tip to Joe Consorti for these amazing charts. But here it shows you the total payrolls rose by 585,000, yet private payrolls dropped by 399,000. Huh? What's going on? That seems to conflict with what's going on. Well, all of the job gains in September came from the US government. All right? And the math checks out too. The government added over 1 million jobs in September, while non-government jobs fell by 400,000. Strange. Okay, well, what's happening in the private sector then if we're losing all these jobs? Let's have a look. Well, new folks joining the multi-job world added nearly 500,000 new multi-job holders in the last week or month or whatever it was. I'm not sure of the exact time frame, but it's definitely, I think it's September. 500,000 people now new have 2 or more jobs. On top of this, the title is wrong, but the total, whoa, did I get the slide wrong? There it is, wrong slide. 8.15 million Americans have 2 or more jobs right now. And that's only growing because people are struggling to make ends meet. Credit card rates are going through the roof, car payments going through the roof, everything is going through the roof, rent is going up, food is going up. People now have to take on a second job. So when President Biden said, let me see, honey, it's going to be all right. Or honey can say to the husband, it's going to be all right. I'm going to go out and drive Uber for the next 8 hours or work part-time at a gym or grocery store or whatever else. That's the reality. Hey, honey, I'll be home late. So, and other crazy news as well. This guy, Sean Fenn, who heads up the United Auto Workers, he had a t-shirt on that says, "Eat the Rich." Now, I am not a professional union negotiator, but in my humble opinion, if you are negotiating, you should come to the table with kind of, I don't know, not open arms, but basically not such an aggressive stance. Okay, that is not setting yourself up for success. Pro tip, whoever makes your t-shirts, that's not how to win anyway in this sensitive time. And I worry that they're turning the screws and then all the big 3 car makers, which are going to be dead in 8 to 10 years anyway, probably, unless they have a radical change, and that's just mathematics. But this disruption is coming. This is not the time to rock the apple cart, in my opinion. And I fear for everybody's jobs out there. Anyway, let's look at the US 30-year mortgage rate. You can see here the mortgage rate is up to 7.93%. That is a multi-decade high, highest since, I think, 23, 24 years. I think last time that high was 1999 or 2000. And so, and rates literally 3 years ago were 2.65%. That means home buyers just 3 years ago would see their interest rate triple if they did a refi or decided to move right now. And that's exactly why existing home sales are at their lowest level since 2010. And the average, and that was the global financial crisis, by the way. And the average new home is about to cost less than the average existing home for the first time since 2005. And you know when something is wrong when old costs more than new. Everything is upside down, everybody. And this is what happens when your mortgage triples. So weird stuff. Finally, and I have been talking about oil a lot recently, but this is kind of a little bit of good news regarding oil. There's been a big sudden drop this week in crude oil prices, and it shows Russia and Saudi Arabia can't monopolize the oil story completely. WTI settled for nearly $82 a barrel, down from $95 last week. And that 13.5% drop in just 6 trading days is quite incredible. And that followed a plunge in gasoline futures after data showed stockpiles were beginning to grow in the United States. And the United States is actually beginning to grow their production of oil up to 12.9 million barrels of oil, which is very impressive. So again, you know, maybe OPEC does not have the US over a barrel, excuse the pun, barrel of oil. So a big thank you, everybody. Thank you for coming here. Quick one today. A lot of weird stuff happening this week, but that's the summary. And tomorrow will be live Q&A at 12 Pacific. I go back to work on that right now as well. So some really hard, interesting questions too, including looking at a few new names and looking at a bit more disruption and allocations, etc. So thank you, Darren. Thank you, Mr. Keyframes, Robert, Irrational, Aristotle Pro, Shane Sullivan, everybody. See you all tomorrow. And thank you to the mods in the chat for keeping us all safe. Have a good night. Bye.